Hi friends, Mindy here. Welcome back to another installment of the Full Deck Challenge. This is a year-long project hosted by Shauna at Shanuki Art, where we alter playing cards. I've mentioned in previous videos that I'm actually not altering playing cards this year. I'm actually doing just Project Life cards because I have a ton of them in my stash and I need to use them up. So the first thing that I'm going to do is add some glue to my Project Life card, and then I am adding this vintage ledger. So the prompts this week are vintage and brown splatters. So I'm using this ledger from, I believe it's 1925 as my vintage inspiration here. And the other things will kind of look vintage, but not actually be vintage. And then I'm just going around and tearing this. That way I have just the rough edges. I just like that look, but you could certainly just trim it down with some scissors. And I think that the rough edges will take the ink and stuff when I do a little bit of distressing here. So I want to knock back some of the white of this Project Life card. And so I'm just using whatever ink is actually on this blender that I have. It's usually like ground espresso or something like that, and just adding that over the top of that section of Project Life card that's got the white background. I'm also using this Tim Holtz flower. This is going to be my focal image. And it has like a white background, but it's more like a cream. It's not a bright white. So I'm just trying to kind of pull all of that together. And this vellum that I have pulled out here, and I've torn down just a little section of this. I'm trying not to cover up too much of that ledger paper. But this vellum is actually my carryover item from last week. So the prompts always have a carryover item and a constant item. So my carryover is this vellum. I'm adding a very thin bead of art glitter glue around my card here where I want my vellum. This is just going to hold down my vellum well enough that you're not really going to see the glue lines this way. And also this is a pretty thick vellum as well, but you do kind of have to hold it in place because whenever vellum gets in contact with liquid glue, it wants to curl. So I just kind of held it in place there for a minute. And then once that dried, I am going to come through here and again tear off the excess. Instead of trimming it with scissors, I just am really wanting the rough edges of this. So you'll see me a bunch of times in this video kind of pull out this flower and put it where I want it and then try some other things and then put it back. It's just kind of part of my process. All in all, this was a very quick video. I kind of had an idea for how I wanted this to look, but I did feel like I needed something else in the background of this floral image. So I have this scrapbooking paper, actually, obviously not vintage. It's just been in my stash. And so part of what I'm trying to do with these altered playing cards or this full deck challenge is to use up some scraps. And these little fun collages are a good way to kind of do that. So I'm trying to decide if I want to sort of tuck this scrapbook paper behind that vellum, like the way that the ledger is, or if I want to put it on top. If I put it on top, I end up losing a lot of the Project Life card, which is kind of what I was trying to avoid. But in the end, I felt like it just looked better. So I'm going to go ahead and glue it down, just using my art glitter glue, kind of eyeballing where I want it. I'm going to add glue. I'm going to add some actually underneath that vellum section as well. And then just kind of get a feel for where I want this scrapbook paper, keeping that torn edge along the top of the scrapbook paper as well. And then I will actually tear this down also. So I'm going to let that dry here just for a second, but I'm actually going to tear this down with a ruler just to make sure that it tears the way that I want it to, because I'm getting, multiple layers here at this point. So just kind of tearing against the edge of that ruler along the bottom and the sides. And that just is going to make sure that it still has that rough edge, but it doesn't just, go crazy. So this little section was a little bit trickier just because it was such a tiny little section, but in the end it worked out okay. And then I'm going to go around the edges with archival ink and ground espresso just to really darken that up and make everything look nice and old. And I'm putting my flower down here. Again, I always have my constant item for this whole project is a word, and these words come from Word Study Wednesday. So this week I was looking at the word dwell, and so that's what I have typed out on my Dymo label maker there. And I decided I needed still something else just kind of up in the top left hand corner there. And so I'm pulling out a little stamp. This is a vintage stamp, and it's kind of in that same color scheme as the paper. And I just felt like it helped kind of break up between the flower and the vintage ledger paper, but I'm still trying to keep the date. I still want you to be able to see the date. I did add a little bit of that archival ink along across dwell too, so that it wasn't that bright white word as well. And then I'm just going to add this art glitter glue to the back of my stamp, and I'm going to kind of tuck this back behind the flower. It's not going back behind the vellum, but it's just kind of right at the edge of it. And then I also am kind of trying to keep that word where it says residence, and because that also kind of ties into my word dwell in a random sort of way. But then I'm just gluing this down. This is, like I said, a Tim Holtz piece here, and so obviously it's not vintage, but it looks vintage, and so I'm happy with how that looks. I do want to add my word, and it's going to be just very bold and across the bottom. And then that's almost everything. I had almost forgotten that I needed to add the brown splatters, so I'm trying to decide how I want to do that. Adding just a little bit more glue here back behind that flower. That's going to help hold that vellum down nice and secure. And I decided to use some Distress Spray Stain. This is in what is the color? A Scorched Timber. And I just added a couple drops of it to my little acrylic block there. I have my fan brush that's been actually just sitting in some water. And so I'm going to add that to the Scorched Timber spray stain. And then I felt like that I needed a little bit more color. So I'm just going to add a few more little dots, just taking that right from the spray bottle nozzle. And the fan brush is always my favorite way to make splatters, and so I'm just going to very carefully splatter this around. I did end up getting some on the little label that I will just end up wiping up. And just a fun fact here, if you are using a Dymo label maker, do not apply heat to it because it will make it flatten right back out. So I'm just going to have to let this sit and dry, air dry. I can't heat this process up, but it just takes a few minutes because there's not a whole lot of splatters on there. But that is the end of the card for me. So if you liked this video, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And until next time, bye.